Now, let's move on. When Manchester United went 2-0 up yesterday in the Cup, the BBC commentator uttered the words, crisis. What crisis? Daniel Harris, nothing like a routine 6-0 win in the Cup to move all the clouds away and make everybody forget about the fact that the club is owned by people who the fans don't really want to own the club.
Well, I definitely don't think the away end forgot that was the case. And obviously, it's nice to smash up an inferior team, but it won't change the way that things are under Solskjaer and have been. There's a couple of good games and a couple of bad games, and there's the small matter of an away game at Manchester City on Wednesday night.
This is it, isn't it? Every time there's a good result, there's a bad result. And every time there's a bad result, so far there's been a reasonable result to make everybody think, well, maybe he's actually learning. Maybe he just gets a little bit of time. Maybe if the club decides that they're going to commit to him for the next while, they might be able to pour their way out of this. But as that continues, the lows become lower and the highs no longer reach the heights that they used to. This is just a routine cup victory. No one should be saying that this is a meaningful stay of execution.
No, not really. I mean, I think I always come back to the same thing with Ole, in that he probably isn't good enough at the things you need to be good enough at to be the best manager that Manchester United could possibly have. But had he had a fair run with injuries, I don't think he'd be under very much pressure at the moment, in that United, currently they're fifth in the league, and he's been without Pogba for the whole season. He's been without McTominay for chunks of the season, and he's now without Rashford, and it's all at the same time. Had he had a fair run with injuries, then I think that he'd probably be okay in his job, and people would be quite satisfied that there was progress. But you see certain games, so the game against Burnley, for example, where you think that he should still be doing slightly more than allow such a miserable performance to occur and do more from the touchline to do something about it. So I think, and this game coming up at City at the weekend, on Wednesday, is particularly worrying for those of us with an interest in the outcome, because it's very difficult to see that there's anything he can do to make that be okay. And it's not simply a case of making sure that United don't get embarrassed. And I don't usually feel that. So, for example, when United played City in the league, I looked at the odds and I thought, United are 8-1 to win. I'll have some of that. And whereas I look at the team that United are going to have to put out on Wednesday, and it's more or less impossible to see how they can possibly do anything other than try and keep the score down. But obviously, you never know.
Yeah, that is the situation that we find Manchester United in at the moment, keeping the score down against Manchester City. The tie, you would have to say, is dead at this moment. There is a lot of potential hope for Manchester United, though. If you look at a potential performance this week, turning things around is probably a step too far. But I don't know, Daniel. I think that there is still a huge amount to be gained from this midweek, this sort of saving face, because it wasn't so much just the result of the first Manchester City game. It was the sort of mood music around it at Old Trafford, the legends sitting in the crowd clearly unhappy with what was going on, and it almost felt like the lowest ebb. Whereas there's a part two to the lowest ebb. There is a part for saving face here.
Yeah, well, I mean, 3-1 with United's first 11 is not over, but 3-1 with the 11 United will have to put out is problematic. And, of course, the manner of the first half against City was not good, although I guess it's not really even the first half. Until City scored, United were actually, I thought, the better team in the game and were doing okay. And we've seen City do what they did to United in the last 25 minutes of that half. We've seen them do it to better teams than United as well. And what happened in that game was Guardiola worked out that if he paid 17 midfield players, United would not be able to get the ball. And if he does that again, it's pretty hard to see what United can do about it. And it's true that keeping the score down against City and not getting thrashed by Liverpool is no particular reason for celebration or no particular sign of progress. But that's where United are. And if we're talking specifically about Ole, I don't think that if you gave Pochettino the job, let's say, I would be no more confident going into this game. Even though I know Pochettino's a better manager than Ole, I saw good Spurs teams of his get whacked by City as well. So there's no easy answer, because the Glazers aren't going anywhere, and that is the principal problem at United, is that they have owners that have run an NFL franchise into the ground and are continuing to do so because the circle of money keeps going round. And they're now doing the same with United. I think the biggest change recently was that they've now stopped trying to get in the top four. If they'd given Ole another, let's say, £100 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but in the context of football clubs and in the context of one of the richest football clubs in the world, it's not really that much money at all. if they'd given Ole another £100 million for 2 midfield players, United would be ensconced in 4th and maybe 3rd. And they didn't. And that tells you that they've given up even trying to get into the top 4. Now, the problem for them is that their revenue streams are based obviously on television money and sponsorship money. And I think at the moment, it looks like the only thing that can possibly save United is the sponsors saying, actually, Mr. Potato Head is a very respectable brand. And we have no desire to be associated with the joke of a football club. And if the sponsors start to decide that they don't want anything to do with Manchester United because Manchester United are actually embarrassing their brand, then that might force the Glazers into action. But otherwise, the only thing that you can see happening that would make things better for United is selling to whichever human rights abusing oligarchs happen to be hanging about. Sorry, oligarchs is probably the wrong word. I think I probably mean plutocrats here. But sell to whichever human rights abusing plutocrats happen to be knocking around. And that also is the worst possible thing for United, in my opinion, in that I would much prefer United was owned by greedy carpetbaggers than by the kind of people that own Manchester City and PSG.
Can I ask you about the protests then? Are they ultimately pointless?
No, they're never pointless. The more attention that is drawn to this kind of thing, the better. The more uncomfortable the Glazers feel, the better. Ultimately, there's probably only one protest that would have the desired effect, and that is people not renewing their season tickets en masse. The time to do that really was in 2005, but then there was another opportunity in 2010. And the problem is that football is amazing, and football's not just about football. It's about history, it's about heritage, it's about tradition. People go to the game, it's about their lives. They go to the game, they go with their family, they go with their mates, and they do it every week. And giving that up is very hard to do, particularly if you don't think that other people will give it up. So the fans are in an invidious position where, in a sense, stopping the Glazers has sort of become incumbent, or not incumbent upon them, but they have some element of power to stop that from happening, except what you're asking them to do is you're asking them to neglect, ignore, reject their personal family history and tradition and their lifestyle and their routine. And people are unwilling to do that with good reason. So the protests will always be important because the more people talk about this, the better. And the easier it is for the Glazers, the less likely they are to give the money that United need to be able to compete at the top level of the game. So the more of it that takes place, the better for United. But it's hard not to think that ultimately the Glazers will be sitting there in Tampa laughing while spending United's money. So it's a complicated and emotional and heart-wrenching situation. But the more abuse the Glazers get, the better for Manchester United.
In terms of the other stuff that's happening in football at the moment, Jurgen Klopp is saying that he won't even be around for the replay of the Cup game after the 2-2 draw last night. We've seen Pep Guardiola also give out about the fixture situation, almost like Guardiola didn't have full awareness of how many games you play in a season, despite the fact that he's been around Manchester City for a couple of years here. What's your take on all this?
Honestly, I thought they both made dickheads of themselves. Let's take Guardiola first. Guardiola complaining that City is empty. It's expensive to watch football. Not everyone is as rich as him. And so people not coming to a game at a very busy time of the season, and a game that you know what the score's going to be, you know it's going to be fairly dull, should be easy for any sensitive person who understands the world to understand. But Guardiola is clearly an exceedingly self-obsessed narcissist. He may also be a footballing genius and savant as well, but we see that he doesn't really get it. And that was yet another example of the many things that he doesn't get. In the same way, he appreciates human rights in Catalonia, but not so much in Abu Dhabi. He just doesn't get it. And he ought to get it because it's not complicated and he's an intelligent man who is able to watch television and read newspapers, but he doesn't. Jurgen Klopp, I think, was probably speaking emotionally, having seen his team concede a 2-goal lead against a team that they should be beating quite easily. And he was probably annoyed speaking in the aftermath of that because he's got another game he doesn't want. However, Jurgen Klopp is another intelligent, articulate individual who should understand that the FA Cup existed for a long time before he turned up in English football and would exist for a long time after he's gone. And I think that it's fine to complain about fixture congestion, but to then disrespect the competition by saying, well, it's so ludicrous that I'm not even going to participate in this, never mind my players, just made him look, again, like extremely self-obsessed and extremely narcissistic, because the FA Cup is an amazing competition. And I think what both he and Guardiola need to understand, because Guardiola was talking about binning off the League Cup last week as well, is that there are lower division teams that are not funded by venture capitalists and are not funded by billionaires and are not funded by human rights abusing plutocrats who are reliant on money from the League Cup, from FA Cup replays. And what Klopp should be doing is saying, for example, I'm pissed off with my players for letting that 2-goal lead slip. I'm pissed off that we have to play a lot of games. But I understand that a replay at Anfield is monumental for Shrewsbury Town. And therefore, we're going to try and win the game. And if we win the game, we win the game. If we lose the game, we lose the game. And that would be fine. And people would understand. I mean, people have been complaining about fixture congestion for a long time. And it is difficult. The human body can only do so much. It can only peak so many times. So I wouldn't disrespect Klopp for not picking any first-team players, but not turning up himself because he is somehow above this now, made him look like an absolute throbber. And there's no sensible way of saying that. And I don't think there is an other side to that particular line of the argument.
I think he might actually end up showing up. We'll wait and see if he's on the touchline or not.
That would be very kind of him.
He should do, really. He should do. And surely somebody's going to tap him on the shoulder and say, you need to show up. It's a big game. Show up. And, you know, fans are going to pay money to buy a ticket, and at least if they're not going to see the team, they should be able to see you. So
it's not so much about seeing him. I mean, no one's coming to see Jurgen Klopp. It's about the fact that he's the manager of Liverpool, and there's a game taking place in which Liverpool are playing. And so for him to say, I can't risk my good players because we've got to win the league. We want to retain the European Cup.
Yeah.
Everyone would understand that. People have been doing that for a long time. But saying he himself is not going to manage the team. Why? He's not playing. I mean, he does do a lot of prancing on the touchline, but I feel sure that he can manage one extra game without ruining his fitness for the prancing and touchline attention seeking that he will need to perpetrate during the course of the rest of the season. So all he had to do was say he was going to rest his players because it was an unwanted replay, but he would try and win the game, and it would be nice if he just said it would be good for Shrewsbury Town. But to say that he himself is not coming is pathetic.
Daniel, we got to go. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts on a range of stories there. We're going to talk with Jason Sherlock about Kobe Bryant next here on OTB AM. First, though, here's LeBron James speaking on Saturday night, just after he surpassed Kobe Bryant's all-time NBA scoring record.